WWDC is happening next week, and I'm personally really looking forward to it. So here's everything to expect. And speaking of things to expect, since it's Friday, you can also expect our brand new June WallpaperZ pack, Rainbow Rivers by Hane. We've got these beautiful designs here, with my favorites being this purple one, then this blue one, and then also this green one, as well as our cover wallpaper that everyone can download for free and in 8K by using the link below. Okay, so I first want to start off with the WWDC event invite. This is what it looks like. It's got this glowing Apple logo, which kind of gives me some Siri vibes, which would make a lot of sense considering that Siri is indeed rumored to be one of the main highlights of this entire event. The keynote itself will be at 10 AM Pacific time on Monday the 10th of June. But of course, WWDC itself will last for almost an entire week, and we'll have loads of developer keynotes and presentations to help them get their apps ready for the official iOS 18 launch in September. But before I talk about iOS 18, I want to quickly touch upon the hardware announcements first, which according to Mark Gurman, there won't be any. And to be honest, I kind of expected this. Like, we got the biggest iPad Pro update since 2018 last month. And they could have just waited a month to announce this at WWDC, but they decided not to, which makes me think that this WWDC event will be fully packed with a lot of software releases, the biggest of which will be iOS 18. And it turns out that we've already done a super detailed video going into the top 23 biggest changes in iOS 18, which I do recommend watching before you watch this video. And that's because I don't want to repeat the exact same things that I've said in that video in this video as well. So I'm only going to mention my top 3 iOS 18 rumored features, which are number 1, the more customizable home screen that will allow you to place your icons anywhere, and then also have specific colors for each icon too. Then number 2, the next gen Siri that will be able to talk to you way more naturally and understand context better. And then number 3, all the AI features inside Apple's first-party apps. Features such as being able to summarize text and notes, being able to automatically write emails for you, being able to use generative AI to remove objects from photos, and my favorite, being able to get an AI summary of all the notifications that you've missed. Now, when it comes to iPadOS, most of the changes will be the same Siri and AI improvements that we are getting in iOS 18 as well. The only difference being that iPadOS will now get a calculator app for the very first time. And because you can run multiple apps at the same time on the iPad, we might also be able to use this next-gen version of Siri far more effectively than on iOS. Like, imagine Siri having her dedicated window, kind of like the same way the ChatGPT app works, and then being able to drag and drop images and files into that Siri window in order to get some help on them, while you keep doing the main thing that you're doing on the other side of the screen. Which brings me to macOS, which is what I'm personally looking forward to the most, as my Mac is the device that I use the longest throughout my day. And I do believe that the updates that we are getting in macOS 15 could be very significant when it comes to my workload. More specifically, I've recently switched back to Apple Mail from Spark, as I do really love Apple's smart mailboxes. If Apple also adds some AI automation tools that would, for example, allow me to automatically download some attachments from certain emails and then group them in folders in Finder, that would be amazing. And I do think that they will. At least on iOS and iPadOS, we are set to be getting AI-powered Siri shortcuts that should let us create automations far easier than now. Apple's Shortcuts app on the Mac is simply not quite as capable. So right now, I would simply use scripts or tools like Microsoft Power Automate and Zapier for my automations. I would love to have something powerful that's just built in. Of course, the other AI improvements that we are getting in Pages, Keynotes, and Numbers would also be quite useful for me as well. More specifically, we are set to be getting the ability to generate slides in Keynote, and I'm pretty sure that Numbers will get some much needed AI features too. Probably similar to what Microsoft offers in Excel thanks to Copilot, where you can tell it to generate some custom tables and it's simply gonna do it for you. Personally, I do use Excel quite often, but I don't have a Copilot subscription anymore. I used to, and that's because it's just way too expensive. If Apple introduced this to Numbers and then they also made it free, I think it could be a game changer for me. On top of this, Xcode is set to be getting a major update too, with the ability to use AI to predict and finish blocks of code automatically. Likely similar to GitHub Copilot, which would of course speed up the development time for apps. And then all of the other AI features will be identical to the ones on iOS and iPadOS. So things such as Safari's intelligent search that will be able to summarize web pages, or even remove unwanted parts of a web page like ads, that will be present too. The same goes for the Notes app, being able to transcribe voice into text for when you're in a meeting. That will also be there. And of course, we are also getting that much improved version of Siri. Although I personally never use Siri on my Mac. In fact, I don't even have it enabled. Like, I literally just disabled it from the menu bar. So all for improvements like the more natural speech and being able to fully control your apps for you by just using your voice are all things that I would mostly use on my iPhone and my iPad instead. Now, Siri is said to be getting a new look on the Mac, with a flat black and white design, interesting enough, that would replace the current colorful look. Now, unfortunately, there will be a requirement for using all of these AI features on the Mac, and that requirement will be Apple Silicon. And surprisingly, these AI features are set to work on any Apple Silicon Mac, not just the M3 or M4 models, which is definitely not something that I was expecting to see, especially since the iOS 18 on-device AI features are set to be restricted to only the iPhone 15 Pros and the upcoming 16s. Aside from this, there are said to be a brand new system settings that will now group individual settings based on priority, making them easier to find. But yeah, I do still miss the pre-macOS Ventura system settings, which was just the far better layout. This will just be the same layout, only improved. But okay, what would the name of macOS 15 actually be? Well, interesting enough, back in 2014, Apple trademarked a number of possible names for future macOS versions, some of which did make it into macOS, some of which have still not been used yet, like Sequoia, Diablo, Redwood, and many more. What's interesting here is that Apple renewed a bunch of these trademarks in November of 2023, such as Skyline, Sequoia, and Rincon. And apparently, if you ask ChatGPT to pick an option, while thinking like an Apple marketing executive, it will actually pick Sequoia, which I do think would be a great name for macOS 15. Let me know if you guys have any other suggestions down below. Which brings us to watchOS. And unlike macOS, iPadOS, and iOS, there isn't really much known here. We are set to be getting the next-gen version of Siri as well, although it won't be the same one as on the iPhone. Instead, she will be more optimized for on-the-go tasks, apparently. Aside from this, we don't really know anything. But it is quite safe to assume that watchOS 11 won't be a big update, as that's what watchOS 10 was, with the widgets, the redesigned app drawer, and the redesigned apps, and more. So expect mostly the same things as with watchOS 10, only with a smarter version of Siri, and more than likely some other AI advancements to some of Apple's first-party apps. Now, watchOS 11 is said to actually drop support for the Apple Watch Series 4, and the weird thing here is that the Series 5 will apparently still be supported, despite the fact that it's got the exact same chip, only with an extra magnetometer for the compass to work. Which brings me to the first big visionOS update, visionOS 2.0. And with it, we are set to be getting some new Apple apps that did not make it at launch. So we could see Apple News, Calendar, Reminders, Home, and more. And these are said to be dedicated versions for visionOS rather than just iPadOS versions of those apps. But we also saw some reports of Apple testing out Apple Pencil integration, allowing you to technically write or draw on any surface that you want. We may see this in visionOS 2 as well. Some of you probably noticed already, but I haven't actually tried the Vision Pro yet, as it's just not launched here in the UK, and I wanted to wait for the official launch as opposed to getting it from eBay in order to get my sizing perfect. It is set to finally launch outside the US right after WWDC, so I'll definitely be picking one up then. But from everyone that I've spoken to, the main issue with visionOS is just that there isn't much to do on it. There are barely any apps available, and it looks like the development of new apps has seriously slowed down as well. So we'll have to wait and see if visionOS 2.0 plus this international launch will fix any of this. Which brings me to tvOS. And here, I do expect some of the AI features to make their way too. More specifically, Siri will likely be able to find TV shows and recommend content much more accurately. But aside from this, Apple TV Plus is finally coming to Android phones, 5 years after its launch, which I do find quite odd that it took them such a long time, especially since we did have Apple TV Plus on Windows, PlayStation, as well as on a number of smart TVs already. So I'm assuming that since the iPhone is Apple's biggest product, they wanted to keep Apple TV Plus exclusive to it for as long as possible. Also, according to Mark Gurman, the launch of the next Apple TV, which was expected in the first half of 2024, has now been delayed. So it isn't quite clear when or even if we'll ever get a new Apple TV at this point, the current version being released back in 2022. So that's everything to expect when it comes to WWDC 2024. Now, of course, there will be even more announcements at the event, which we'll be talking about in upcoming videos. So stay tuned for a lot of content starting from next week. We won't be doing a live stream this time around, by the way, just because I'm quite busy and I'll be traveling towards the end of the week, and I just want to make sure that I record all the usual content before I go. So yeah, do subscribe to the channel and also check out our Discord if you want to continue the conversation there. I'm Daniel, this means ZONEofTECH. I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.